But what is consciousness made of? And where is it located? To answer these questions, we need to look at consciousness in its most elementary form, as quantum waves and as a property common to all that exists. To explain what this invisible world of potentialities is and how we get from there everything that occurs in our lives, including our jobs, the family that we have, our health, and the state of our finances. But intelligent acts also require motivation and determination to achieve desirable goals, or to put it differently, we need a motivational feeling that prompts us to take action towards achieving these wishes. The challenge now is to identify what are these basic emotions at quantum levels. You will be surprised to know that quantum scientists have done just that. The issue of time has always been surrounded by mystery and controversy. At the center of the paradox have been questions such as when did time start and when will it end? More perplexing, what happens after it stops? Time, therefore, doesn't exist as such, because reality is composed of discrete and fixed, self-contained moments independent of each other. What made great minds of quantum physics say that the past is not fixed? It was essentially to justify the results of their equations and the results of experiments such as the line on the double-slit experiment, which we covered in previous episodes. If the past is not fixed, an important question that we need to address is what determined it and what changed the past? 300 years ago, Isaac Newton led people to believe that occurrences were predetermined. He thought that if we could calculate the location and motion of all particles in the universe, you should be able to calculate the precise state of the universe at any time. According to this view, the future and the past were already determined in the intricate world of particles. We now know that this is not possible because, together with other reasons, the uncertainty principle prevents making any accurate predictions. What's the uncertainty principle? Antoinette inquired. It's a quantum concept published by Werner Heisenberg in 1927, stating that it's impossible to determine accurately the position and the momentum of a system, for example a particle, simultaneously, the prophet answered. It proved that we can only perceive a somewhat unpredictable reality one step at a time. even more perplexing, the prophet explained, was the discovery that the act of observation actually determined the past of the particle. If unobserved, the particle exhibited in a certain past history, but if scientists looked at it, it exhibited in a different past history. Something from the present was determining the past. And this was not a fluke of science. Experiment after experiment confirmed the same results. An act of observation determines or changes past experiences. Because this is so counterintuitive, people hearing this for the first time feel a strong tendency to either ignore it or simply remain skeptical. How can we possibly accept that what is happening today changes what happened yesterday? How can we believe that something that we do right now can have an effect on what happened when I was a child? Yet, this is what quantum scientists are telling us, so we need to find an explanation. An act of observation, let's call it with a capital O, changes what is observed. Let's call it with a capital X. But what is an act of observation? Essentially, it is a thought, a decision to consider something or not. For a scientist working on the double-slit experiment, it is to decide whether to look at the path of the particle or not to look. If the scientist looks at the particle, the state of the particle is disturbed. Once X is disturbed by an observation, the next step in the process is that the disturbance collapses the wave function of one of the other copies of X that exist in the cloud of potentialities or probabilities. That is, it brings into physical reality a copy of X in a different state from this cloud of probabilities. This copy of X is not only in a different state, but it is also part of a different snapshot of reality containing a different history, that is, a different past and future. When we perceive the new copy of X, we also perceive the different past in that particular snapshot. Let's now replace X with the thought of a real-life event, let's say going to work. And let's call this event W for work. Just like we observe X, we also observe with our thoughts this particular event, since our thoughts are acts of observation. Thinking about going to work disturbs X, this particular event, and disturbs and brings one of its potential copies into our reality. After the collapse of the wave function, we notice that we are in fact going to work, but what we don't realize is that this act has now a different past, because by observing W, the thought of going to work, we have brought a new snapshot where this act exists within a different context, a different history. Thinking is the most basic act of observation, and since we have a choice to pay more attention to some thoughts than to other thoughts, there is always an intention behind an act of observation. That means that we can intently and purposely contribute to the collapse of the wave function of events with a particular past. As you can see, the past is not set in stone. It can be manipulated. The intention to achieve something inevitably brings a past that is conducive to this achievement. The catch, unfortunately, is that because we are only aware of the past that generated the current present, we are oblivious to other pasts. So how can we know that we have changed it? We can only deduce it from logical and rationality from the results of experiments and equations. As we saw in previous episodes, quantum scientists refer to the intention of objects such as a molecule as propensity. By understanding how a propensity of a molecule can change the path of this molecule, we can also understand how our thoughts modify past events. So, our thoughts are important because they are our means to bring not only a better future, but also the better past creating this particular future. And one aspect of our thoughts that is particularly important is our imagination. Let's see what the second book of the trilogy says about it. Another important factor is imagination. It plays an important role here because we go shopping into this world of options when we imagine what we want. Imagining things is a very effective way of collapsing the wave function because your imagination carries the energy waves of your intentions. If you can imagine something, the likelihood that it could become real does exist. And by persevering on these thoughts, you increase this possibility. In this episode of what quantum science taught us about being human, I talked about the still mysterious and controversial issue of time. Where does time start and where does it end? Or does it really exist? I recapped on the notion that since reality is composed of discrete snapshots, each one containing its own history, time as such doesn't really exist because the snapshot is a fixed state of the world. What gives the impression of time is in reality the distance between events in this fixed picture. And I pointed out that the illusion of time is so powerful that people normally look with skepticism at the fact that it is the present that creates the past and not the other way around. I then explained that time is closely related to the uncertainty principle. No event can be predicted with complete accuracy, including past occurrences, because reality takes place one step at a time, each step bringing its own history. The past, like the future, is unpredictable. So, what creates a new past? I explained that in the same manner as the path of a particle is determined at the moment of observing it in the quantum double-slit experiment, it is an act of observation what creates past events. And I said that since a thought is a basic act of observation, thinking collapses the wave function of past and future events. That is, it is our own thoughts that bring a snapshot of reality containing its own history. I pointed out that since quantum science showed us that what we do today influences what happened yesterday or many years ago, we need to find an explanation of why this is the case. The explanation I provided is that observing something brings about a new copy of what is observed, and that this new copy is embedded in a new history of events. That is, it comes with a different past and prospective future in a whole snapshot of reality. I went on to explain that by having an intention to pay more attention to some thought while ignoring other thought, we are effectively bringing into reality the past that led to the realization of the contents of these particular thoughts. And I said that our intentions are our human way to implement what scientists refer to as propensities, and that they are the forces that govern our lives. Our thoughts are important, but so is our imagination, because what we imagine with intent increases the probability of collapsing the wave function of these events. At every instance, we willingly or unwittingly collapse one probability from the world of potentialities, the one that best suits these inner wishes. This is the last episode in this series, what quantum science taught us about being human. Throughout these 8 episodes, I tried to bring to you the basic quantum principles that explain how our human faculties, including intelligence, rationality, emotional feelings, can be traced down to quantum mechanisms common to all that exists. I hope to have convinced you that the fact that our human species has existed for such a brief moment compared to the age of the universe compels us to stop believing that we are so special and accept that our human capabilities must be manifestations of underlying universal attributes. You may have noticed that what I covered was from book 1 of the trilogy, The Quantum Prophet, mostly. These are deep but basic concepts, and to really appreciate the contributions that quantum science is making to shape up our future, we need to look at these principles more in depth and how they are challenging our understanding of human conditions and human psychology. We are now well and truly into a quantum era, and it is inevitable that quantum principles, the most accurate science that ever existed, will lead us to a society of the future where wars, poverty, and undue diseases have been eradicated. I cover these fascinating topics in book 2 and 3 of the trilogy, and I hope to bring them to you in a new series of what quantum science taught us about being human in due time. In the meantime, I would like to say that it's been both a privilege and an honor to see that the videos that I produced have been received with a warm welcome from a number of viewers. I, as usual, welcome questions and comments that you may have. I look forward until we meet again.